Hey, it's Phil from smilinggardener.com. Welcome to my home. I'm not out in the garden today. I actually have my balcony garden behind the camera here. I was out in the garden last week though, doing a bunch of planting and all kinds of fun stuff. And I've got a little mini series planned for you over the next week of a few videos I'm going to shoot and a few corresponding articles I'm writing that is really something that's been really useful for me, and I hope it'll be useful for you. And it starts with an Italian economist named Vilfredo Pareto, who 100 years ago was an economist but also an avid gardener, and he was in his garden and he was looking at the pea pods in his garden and noticing, actually he did some counting, and he realized that 20% of the pods contained about 80% of the overall peas he had. And he thought, wow, that's really interesting. And he started applying this in his economics work, and he figured out that in Italy, about 20% of people owned about 80% of the land in Italy. And then when he went to other countries, he figured this was the case in other countries. And since then, we've learned that this is kind of a rule that seems to apply to a lot of different areas of our lives. It's applied a lot in business, where, for example, 80% of the sales of any company often comes from about 20% of the company's best customers. And so I've used that a little bit in my business life, but I've also used it in my gardening life. It's called the Pareto Principle, or the 80-20 rule for short. And basically, in your life, if you can figure out what that 20% is, it can be really useful for you, because in any undertaking you are getting into, it turns out that about 80% of the results you get from that project come from about 20% of the effort that you put into it. So if you can figure out what that 20% is, you can get most of the results for a lot less work, or you could put in the same amount of work and get much grander results. So it's a really interesting rule. So in the garden, what I want to do for you over these next few videos is try to come up with an 80-20 rule for the garden. And that is a little bit challenging, because I know many of you follow me because you're trying to grow highly nutritious, nutrient-dense food. And in order to do that, it can be quite a challenge sometimes, especially if we're working with poor soil. And so we do need to get into some science, and it gets a little bit finicky, and it gets to be a little bit more work and knowledge is required. But if you're just trying to grow a basic garden, or even for people like me, it really is important to remember what are the most important things I can be doing. And that's especially important for me because my main garden, I don't live there. So I just come once in a while, and I have to very efficiently get the most important things done. So what I want to leave you with today is, in your garden, what do you think, how do you think this 80-20 rule applies? What do you think is the most important thing, or the most important couple of things you need to do to get the most success out of your garden? I'm curious if you let me know down below if we're going to get a lot of the same answers, or if it's going to differ depending on what kind of environment you're growing in. So yeah, I think this is going to be really neat, and I'm going to talk about it over the next week or so. I've also, over the last month, I've been taking my full Smiling Gardener Academy, my online gardening course, and I've been creating what I think of as an 80-20 course. I call it Academy Lite. And the reason I started doing this is because after my last promotion and enrollment period of my main course, some of you gave me feedback that the course was a little bit too long for you, and just too comprehensive, and a little bit out of budget sometimes. And so what I've done is I've created a course that's 70% less information. It's really the essential stuff. I've taken out some of the really advanced stuff, not all of it, but some of it, and some of the extra topics that not everyone needs, such as hydroponic gardening and forest gardening, and I've taken that out. So it's 70% less. The fee is 70% less as well, and it's a 6-month course instead of a 12-month course. So I hope it's more manageable for some people who couldn't take the whole course on. So yeah, I'm in the middle of this 500, I'm guessing it's going to be about a 500-hour update to the course that's going to happen over this whole next year, and Academy Lite is part of that. So I'm going to be opening it up for enrollment next week for just a few days, so if you're interested in that, be sure to stay tuned. And otherwise, I just hope you'll watch this 80-20 series. I think it's going to be really neat. And for today, I just want to know down below, what do you think are the 1 or 2 things that are the most important things you can do for the success of your garden this year? We'll try to figure out this 80-20 principle for the garden. That's all for now. I'll see you in a couple days.